Hey folks! Today I'm going to be talking about lacto-fermentation. Later I'll give y'all a demo of how to prepare some vegetables for a lacto-ferment and for pickling with vinegar. But first let's talk a little about fermentation. Many of our staple foods are fermented, or at least they were traditionally. Fermented foods are things like yogurt, cheese, tofu, pickles, olives, and even some things you might not think of like vanilla, coffee, or chocolate. With chocolate, for example, fungi and bacteria are responsible for creating the desirable flavor of otherwise extremely bitter cacao seeds. Fermented foods are produced through the action of microorganisms, fungi and bacteria, breaking down carbohydrates into alcohol or organic acids like lactic acid and acetic acid. The flavors of miso and soy sauce come from koji. That's a mold culture that's used to ferment rice and soybeans. During this fermentation process, enzymes are produced that break down the proteins into amino and fatty acids and complex carbohydrates into simple sugars. Microbes begin breaking down sugars, proteins, and indigestible compounds in the food. This means that fermentation acts as a predigestion process, allowing the body to access nutrients without working as hard. The acidic environment created during lacto-fermentation is ideal for beneficial bacteria and inhospitable for pathogenic bacteria. That's why it's safe to eat. More than safe, lacto-fermented food, when eaten in large quantities, can replenish beneficial bacteria in the gut. Unfortunately, you won't get probiotic benefits from fermented foods when you get store-bought products that have been pasteurized. But that's why I'm showing you how to make your own fermented veggies at home. I'll be using carrots, peppers, basil, oregano, and coriander seed from the garden, and other ingredients from Amy's farm in Ontario, and my own backyard. For my first 3 jars, I'll be using a mixture of chopped carrots, peppers, and nopales. Next, I'll add lightly ground coriander seed and peppercorns. I mixed everything up in a bowl, but you can also just add your spices directly to the jars. After that, I'll separate the veggies into 3 piles and add my spices: basil and oregano, dill, and then I'll lightly crush some fennel seed. Last, I'll add chopped garlic to all 3 jars. And I wanted to experiment with other flavors, so I'll do 1 more jar with just carrot, cardamom, lemon balm, and crushed pepper. Now it's time to prepare a brine. You generally want to add about 2 tablespoons of salt per quart when fermenting vegetables. However, if you have the brines of past lacto-ferments, like these, you can use them to inoculate a new batch, and you won't have to add as much salt. So your pickled veggies will be more flavorful and less salty tasting. I asked my friends for some of their old brines so I'd have more diversity of flavors to play with. I also want to try one with just nopales and peppers, but I'm concerned about not having enough soil bacteria to get the fermentation going, since nopales don't grow underground. So I'm going to show you a way to can these with vinegar instead. I'll use nopales, peppers, dill, crushed pepper, coriander seed, and some garlic. First, I remove the spines from the nopal pads and slice them into 1/2-inch strips. Next, I filled the jar with strips of nopales and peppers, leaving about a 1/2 inch of headspace. I added 1 clove of garlic to the jar as well. Now I'll combine the salt, hot peppers, dill, water, and vinegar in a large saucepan and bring it to a boil. Last, I'll pour the hot pickling solution over the nopales. I labeled all my jars so I don't forget which one is which, and now I'll leave them on the counter, away from the sunlight, for about 5 to 10 days to let the bacteria work their magic in the lacto-ferments and give the flavors of the nopales and vinegar solution time to infuse. They can sit much longer than this and remain safe to eat. However, the texture will change and the veggies will soften more and more over time. If you leave them for too long, they can get mushy. I also like to place a rag under my lacto-ferments. As the bacteria eat the sugars in the veggies, they produce gases. The buildup of pressure in the jars from the gases can cause them to leak. You have a few options for minimizing this pressure buildup. One option is to use a lid that has a valve built in to allow gases to escape the jar, but I don't think these are necessary to buy. Another option would be to use the type of lid I use in this video, where there's a ring and a flat piece. You can leave the ring mostly unscrewed to allow the flat piece to get pushed up whenever there's a buildup of pressure, so the jar will effectively burp itself. With this technique, you'll want to place a glass weight or smooth rock that you boil in order to clean it on top of the vegetables to hold them underwater. One other option is to leave the lid tightly screwed throughout the fermentation process and periodically tip the jar over to cover the top of the veggies with brine. This is a method that's a great option for vegetables with a higher sugar content like carrots, which can get unwanted rot or mold on the top if they're exposed to the air for too long. This option has the most leakage, but it's nothing a rag placed underneath can't handle. You'll also want to be sure to open your jar over the sink or a container if you want to save the brine, because it will more than likely fizz over after not being opened all that time.